welcome to the July 2nd edition of the Bubb Report. I am Rion Charles. This week on our program, we reflect on the untimely and tragic death of up-and-coming Grenadian artist Josiah Jonty Robinson. Jonty's body, which was found on the shore of the popular BBC beach in Grenada's tourist belt, sent shockwaves through the local LGBTQ community. Jonty himself alluded to the many instances of discrimination, death threats, and violence he endured in Grenada.
I've had a lot of obstacles. I had to jump through hoops that I never even thought I could have jumped through. When I started music, I really wanted to be able to showcase my talent in the best way possible. I never really had the opportunity to do that because of the homophobia that I was facing in Grenada. Not many people wanted to work with me or be associated with me, but it did not stop me from achieving my goals.
Writing in the British Vogue magazine, Tenniel Clark said of Jonty, quote, "As a Caribbean storyteller, his natural brilliance through songwriting and lyrical mastery shone through the darkness of the world that frequently confronted him and questioned his place and space. As a son, bonus son, nephew, cousin, neighbor, and brother, he was always generous with his time and gave all of himself to be surrounded by unconditional love," unquote. Also on the report, we sit with published author Sorana Mitchell to discuss her first publication, Still Smiling. In the book, Sorana reflects on her time growing up on the community of Willis, as well as her complicated journey navigating life as an undocumented immigrant in the United States. We welcome our guests, Kenita Placide, Executive Director of the Eastern Caribbean Alliance for Diversity and Equality, Reverend Osbert James, Minister of the Gospel, John Doe, who prefers to remain anonymous, and Sorana Mitchell, published author. We thank you for joining us.
Viewers and listeners, we are now joined by the author of Still Smiling. Still Smiling is a memoir by Grenadian reporter Sorana Mitchell. The book recounts traumatic experiences from childhood to present day. It includes her father's untimely death in Grenada, sexual abuse on summer trips to Canada, immigration to the United States of America, mental illness, and her subsequent return to her homeland. We're now happy to be joined by the author herself, Sorana Mitchell, who is, in fact, making her first appearance on the Bubb Report. Sorana, welcome to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bob, and how are you?
I'm doing very well. We have two interviewers here, two reporters here, and I have the honor of interviewing a reporter who we probably crossed paths at the GBN, but those were it might have been brief, maybe.
Maybe I don't think so. I don't think we crossed paths.
I don't think I ever
remember you. I remember you way back at Camp CC. I remember you then.
Yes,
I remember you then, and it always makes me smile.
I was a loud-mouthed brat there.
You always made me laugh back then, and I must say it always makes me smile to say Dr. Bob, because you worked for it. Congratulations.
Yes, absolutely. I really appreciate that. Thank you so very much. Yes, perhaps I was in my first year at TAMCC when you were in your second year.
Yes.
So I do remember those days under the tree. I don't know if that tree still exists. Does it? I don't know. I haven't been there.
I don't think so. I recall you more in the library, coming to sit among my friends and our group, and you telling us your stories and so on, and we would all be laughing.
I do remember those days. I do remember those days in the discussion room at the library there. Now, Sorana, you're here to discuss your memoir. Now, not many people like writing about themselves. In fact, I find writing about oneself one of the most challenging things that one can do. Not many people like to do that. So
Yeah.
what mustered up the courage in you? What was the impetus for you to really put pen to paper in respect of some very deeply personal experiences that you had in your life?
Exactly that. I had some very deep experiences, and because of those experiences, I wanted to share because other people sharing helped me get through a lot. And I felt that I had something to say, something to share in the hope that it will help someone. Again, as you said, it's hard because one of the reasons for a while I wanted to do this, but as you said, it's hard to write about oneself. One, two, you think about the other people that it might impact. My whole thing was not to hurt anybody, so that's why I stayed away from it. And but in the end, wanting to help someone else won, because and in so doing, releasing that book, it opened up for me a door to other people's lives. People felt somewhat like a kinship, something to me, that they can just come and just talk to me about things, and I would listen. That used to happen before, mind you. One example would, when I was in the US, I would go to Starbucks with a book to read and buy a coffee, and there I would be sitting, and someone would come, nice weather we're having, right? And then I would hear their whole life story. So
Mhm,
that, but it started happening more and more with the book because people would tell me things I didn't expect to hear, you know,
mhm,
traumas that they're still dealing with, family issues, and stuff like that. So it has opened up um, a path for people to share.
mhm. Now, whenever we think of childhood days, you heard the Mighty Sparrow has this song that says, "School days are happy, happy, happy days." Whenever we paint a picture of growing up in the Caribbean as children, it is framed as extremely idyllic, as the most ideal environment to grow up in. But that was not
Mhm.
necessarily your experience, was it?
Nope,
And of course, not to give
not
away anything
necessarily.
from the book, but
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I was hit hard at 9 years old, with my father's passing, um, which was very traumatic for myself and the rest of my family. And the consequences under which we were told that he passed. I mean, we did not have an autopsy, we did not have any of those things involved, but the information that was shared with us um, caused a lot of pain and sorrow in our family. And thereafter, it affected my whole family. My the close knit family that I had disappeared. Everybody just left, and myself being the youngest, I was left to my own demises. Yes, you hear what I say? And because
not
if
devices,
you read the book,
demises.
you
I
would,
like that.
yeah, if when you read the book, you would see that growing up, it was wonderful with my father, especially. My father and I would dance together. He made me feel, and I talk about myself, but he was like that with all my siblings. They all have this loving story to tell about my father. He was really a wonderful person, and even people who were not in our family, he would help, he would share, he would give. That sort of person he was. And so, with his passing, he's a glue that kept us together. Everyone, it unraveled to us, you know? And then later on, I was exposed to sexual abuse on trips to Canada. And, all these things really affected the person I was. But I hid a lot of things by smiling. That's why I named the book Still Smiling, because I used to be laughing a lot, as you would remember. In times this year, I'll be
Yes.
laughing,
Mm-hmm.
laughing, laughing. But sometimes, many a times, I'd be crying inside because of pain,
Mm-hmm.
But now
Mm-hmm.
I can laugh freely. Although
Mm-hmm.
some people have been telling me to smile some more when I'm walking in St. George's. We have this thing about us in St. George's. If you see somebody serious, put a smile on your face. I've been getting that a lot recently.
Mm-hmm. So what I hear you saying is that that smile masked a lot of that pain and trauma that you were experiencing. And sometimes
Yes.
people see a smile and they think, "Oh, that person must be fine." Or there is the cursory greeting that obtains in Grenada where somebody say, "Oh, hi, how you doing?" And you say, "You're fine." Yeah, I'm well. I'm blessed. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
but
Uh
that is sort of a dubious characterization.
yes. Yes. I hid behind the smile, but now when I smile there's freedom and
Mm-hmm.
there's lightness and there is joy, you know? And I mean, if you see me walking around serious, it's not because I'm unhappy or whatever. I might be focusing on something, trying to figure something out. So I'm very focused. I'm always told I look like a judge because I'm so serious. But before that, the smiling masked a lot of pain, and it took years of working on myself. And it's, you as you would know, it's a process. Took years of working on myself to get to where I am right now, because while living in the US, after my daughter was born, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And that threw me. I mean, another something else that unraveled me, you know. So there I was. Growing up, I had to deal with my father's passing, then sexual abuse. Then in my mid 20s, I'm hit with mental illness. So it's like bam, bam, bam. How do you get out of this one, Sarana? How do you smile in this? And it was hard
Mm-hmm.
because no one understood what was happening, myself included at times. But, because of my background as a reporter, research, research, research. You
Yeah.
understand? The books,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I did. I pounded the books. Anything I could read that would help me, I would read it. If it looked strange, I would say, there's this scripture that says, you go before me always or whatever. So I would read it. If it didn't have anything for me, I would release it.
Mm-hmm.
But I kept researching and looking for ways and means to help myself, so that, because I learned very early on with the diagnosis that even though you have medication, even though you have a therapist, the junk of the majority of the work is dependent on you, the patient. And that is sometimes the hardest pill to swallow, because you would want someone to just take it away, remove it,
Mm-hmm.
but the work comes from you. You have to do that work, that positive thinking, that focusing, that remembering to take the medication, to take care of yourself, that sort of thing. All those things, it's work. And you have to decide to do that work, because the doctor can't do it for you. The therapist or whoever else wouldn't do it for you. You have to do it. So, Dr. Bub, it was a lot of work. It continues to be a lot of hard work. But I rather smile with joy and happiness, not a mask,
Mm-hmm.
to in my life. So that's
Yeah.
why I do the hard work.
Mm-hmm. And
Mhm.
you have essentially being very vulnerable, Sarah, because our society, people in our society, are not usually open about instances of sexual trauma that they experience. And
Mhm.
certainly, mental health is still a major taboo in our society. In fact, it is akin to perhaps having some manner of curse or demonic possession. I'm
Possession.
sure perhaps
Mhm.
you heard, that you just pray that stuff away. So
Yeah, I was told all of that,
how
brother.
yeah how did you manage to deal with perhaps the reaction that people elicited when you brought those things up?
Um, I came to a personal realization and acceptance of myself. That's the first and most important thing. You have to accept your situation, you have to accept yourself. If you don't, then you'll be grappling with a lot of things because everyone would want to tell you how to live your life. At the moment I accepted that this was not something that was done to me like Obia or voodoo or whatever. I said, I am staying on the route of science. I am not getting myself to delve into this thing. Staying with science. These people have spent years trying to understand these things. If they're telling me this is what is happening, I'm listening to my body, I'm studying myself as much as they are telling me things, and as much as I'm researching and reading books. So as a result, I equipped myself with what I needed to help myself. You understand? Um, yes, there are people who still laugh at me. There are people who, as we say, shoo shoo behind my back. There was one person who shocked me because I thought,
We would not be Grenadian if we didn't shoo shoo now. Let's just- and I
because
say that in jest, but that's just the reality.
I mean, this happened to me on two occasions. On by two persons I thought who were more evolved. One of them said, "Oh, is she crazy?" The other one set me up so whereby the one of her goons said to me, "Aren't you crazy?" And in front of several people, I guess they were looking for maybe to me to react in a maybe violent way or something like that. I simply took the opportunity, whether they were willing to listen and to learn or whatever, to explain to them, yes, I have been diagnosed with a mental illness, and I live with it. I take medication and I take care of myself, and that's it.
Mhm, mhm. And it's like any other illness, it's like any other non-communicable disease. It's like diabetes. You take your medication for your diabetic complications. You take your medication for a headache. And of course, speaking of mental health, you also are part of the organization, the Friends of the Mentally Ill. Did those
Yes,
experiences that you recount in the book really inspired you to get involved in
yes,
being an advocate for the mentally ill in Grenada?
yes. Uh, Unfortunate or maybe fortunate for me, I had a relapse 2 years ago, which sent me to Mount Gay Mental Hospital.
Hmm.
And although I was in a deteriorated state, I was able to take in the area, the space, the place where people like myself are lumped because we are not seen as, for want of a different terminology, human beings. And when I came through and I said, no, I will do everything I can um, to help in whatever way I can. I knew Dr. Spencer. I was involved, off and on before, but I got spirit to get more involved
Hmm.
in the work of the Friends of the Mentally Ill because there is so much work that needs to be done. It has a lot to do with education. It has a lot to do with people who live with a mental illness to not be afraid, not feel they have to hide and be ashamed of themselves, um, as well as, afraid that people are going to mock them but you can mock me, you can make fun of me. I really don't care. Just roll off of my shoulder. I don't care. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
responsible for the air I breathe, so I don't
Mm-hmm.
care. I'm
Yeah.
usually in my own world anyway.
Yeah, of course, with your music, which you are a musician, and
Yes.
your daughter seems to have also inherited that too, the singing.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but we always talk about in the context of Grenada, it's taking a village. Do you feel as if you, during the course of your life, receive support outside of that immediate familial support? You talk about your dad, that the village, whatever village that you grew up in, was supportive, whether that is the community, whether that's school, whether that's work
Um,
institutions, friends.
I at the extent I would talk about church because I was very much
Okay.
involved in church, brought up
Hmm.
Roman Catholic. Um, I have since will admit to be a backsliding, if you use that term with Catholics. I don't attend church, but that's where I was brought up, and that's the faith that I understand and know.
Hmm.
Um, but at the same time, in church, I was given an opportunity, my first opportunity, not well, I would read at home and stuff like that, but the chance to start standing up and read, the discovered my ability to read very well in church, in the Willis Catholic Church. And as
Hmm.
a child, from 5, 6, I'll be reading prayers. Before I was communed, I was reading the first and second readings in church. Anything they had in the parish, which belonged to Willis, Vendom, Boca, Willis, I would be representing Willis. So I was always given the opportunity in church. So in that sense, I would say yes, the village helped me because that was the community I knew and trusted and belonged. But elsewhere in school, I think I used to dream a lot in school. And later on, when I got diagnosed with bipolar, I understood where a lot of it came. I saw it, its beginning in my teenage years. I saw where it began because one has to, if one really wants to help oneself, one has to understand oneself, and you have to go back because that's one of the things I
Hmm.
did. And in going back, that's why I was given, I got the courage to write, to tell a story. And going back, I could see where certain things started. My mind just going off on its own, and it's that sort of thing, and just I'm not focused, and I would wonder what's happening with me, but I had no one to tell or understood what was happening. And I mastered a lot of things. I mean, I think I was able to exist in school under the radar for as long as I could. I mean, at times I would wonder my grades could be better than this, but I'm just like, psh,
Hmm.
I understand something today, and then afterwards I forget it tomorrow. So the
Hmm.
focus was not there. So I was able to go back and see a lot of things in my past that helped me to understand, where the culmination of the diagnosis, and understand what was
Hmm.
happening to me and so on. But other than that, yeah, I think the village for me would have consisted mainly of church. Other than that, I did not have much. Um, I didn't have much to do with anything else in the village. That the village, the physical village I grew up in. As
Hmm.
I would always say, I just slept there. I went to school. I slept. I went to church there. I just went
Hmm.
to school. I hang out with my friends, go home, sleep, go again. That sort of
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And two final questions. The first one has to do with your immigrant experience. Of course, in the text you talk about that immigrant journey. Again, that's another truism that we have in our culture, that you go away, and when you go away, it's this idyllic, wonderful experience. And when you get back to Grenada, they say, "Oh, you look so refined," and you get nice. You're talking in style, whatever else is said, right?
And many of them put on the show, right?
Right. You come to America, you come to Brooklyn for 2 weeks, and then you're sounding as though you were here for 10 years, right?
Oh yeah. So, um, my journey to the US was in 2002. And going back in my mind, sitting down and doing everything, I was like, girl, you understand world news and everything, and world history, and you understand things. What on earth got you to leave your country in 2002 to go to the US right after 9/11? The world had changed. Why did you do this? I couldn't find an answer because I was just so it was already happening. The illness was already taking its toll on me, and I was under a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and I just wanted to get away. But one thing one has to understand is that you cannot run from yourself. You will always be there. So all this unsettledness that was going on up here was me in the US anyway, you know? And I was in the US, I stayed undocumented for close to 15 years. I worked as a cleaner, as a um, I took care of the elderly. Those are the two main tasks that I did. Um, and it was hard. It was tough because being diagnosed. Because I didn't mind doing anything because I don't care. I clean, I do whatever I have to do. But with the mental illness coming with that factor, that's when it became hard. And especially the diagnosis after my daughter was born. Oh my gosh, my life was hard because I had no one to lean on. I had nowhere to turn. And I have a daughter to take care of. I have this diagnosis. No one wants anything to do with me. No one understands. It's just me, myself, and I, and this child, you know? And it was, if tough is a word, well, I don't know right now. I can't think of a tougher word than tough. It was really,
Mhm,
really, really, really tough. It was
mhm,
tasking physically, it was tasking emotionally, tasking mentally, because there I was trying to put myself back together after having this diagnosis and understanding how my head is working, and I have to deal with taking care of a young child on my own, basically.
mhm,
So I had to realize that if I have to take care of her, I have to be able to take care of myself. So,
mhm.
and I had to trying to find a balance, which was tough. And in the process of trying to find a balance, then I found this desire to sing, which I thought was really crazy. I was like,
Mhm.
is this bipolar? That's what I said to myself. I mean, wanted to sing, ask me to speak, ask me to talk, don't ask me to go sing or stand up in front of people and sing. No, I'm not doing this. But every
Were you
time I was
ever in
that,
the choir at the convent? Were you?
no,
No.
no, no. I listen. I loved singing, but
Yeah.
I would not go and sing on a stage because I would
Mhm.
tear people who sing apart. You heard Simon on American Idol and whatever else. We are a kid. We were good friends. So I would not go outside on the stage and sing because I still do it because whenever I record myself, I tear everything apart.
Mhm.
Okay, I look for everything. I just tear it apart, and there I was wanting to sing. So that rattled me, and I met some wonderful people who helped to train me, work with me. They helped me with my whole life, basically, because I needed help. And when you need help and you put it out to the universe, you put it out to God, as we've been taught to call the universe, um, He answers. And He sent these people that I didn't know, they didn't know me, but they opened up their arms to me, and they held my hand and helped me along the way in so many ways. They helped me. They helped to train me to sing. They helped me in every aspect of my life. You understand? And so that's why I learned a long time ago that once you've been blessed, you pass the blessing on. And that's why I live my life the way I live. If I could help someone, I help them. I did it before, and I do it more now than ever, because I know what it's like to do not have. I know what it's like to be without money, be without not knowing where you're going to live, where you're going to sleep, where you're going to take care of your daughter, all those things.
Yeah.
I know what it's like. Yeah.
And it's important to pay it forward. I think that is
Yes.
such a critical element there. Now, in respect of where we can obtain copies of your book, I intend to purchase mine on Amazon. So that's where I'll be getting mine. But where can potential readers get a copy of your book
That's the main place
outside
you
of
can get it
Amazon?
on Amazon in Kindle and paperback version. I have some copies with me, but it would be easier to get it on Kindle, the Kindle version, and the paperback version from Amazon. What the copies I have with me are 40 EC. Yeah, but if you're in the US or Canada or wherever, and you would like to purchase, it's on Amazon in Kindle and paperback version. And I must
Absolutely.
say thank you, Mr. Bob, for this opportunity. And I have, been watching your shows and I'm very, 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 very so proud of you.
Thank you so very much. It means a lot. I'm humbled. I'm really
Yes,
humbled.
keep up the good
It's
work. Keep
not.
up the good work.
Yes, absolutely. I say it's not about me, but it's about highlighting and illuminating the stories of our people. And we
Excellent.
have to be the change that we want to see. Many people critique the media in Grenada, and I would not be one of those. I'm one of those people who, if I critique something, then I want to be able to do something to change the material condition of that thing. So that's
Okay.
just my approach.
Okay.
Any final words from you?
If I must say, I would say love. Love yourself, love your family, and but most of all, love yourself, because in so doing, you're going to take care of how you take care of you and how you allow people to treat you. Because coming back to Grenada, if I may add, I had some issues there, and I allowed certain things to get away where I worked and so on. And looking back now, I'm like, hmm, it's because I was questioning a lot of things about myself and allowed a lot of things to slip through. But I must say, to just love, to show love. It doesn't matter who the person is, if you do not accept their lifestyle or whatever. Many of us, we live in this community, in this society where Christianity is preached, and the center of I ask you to show love. Okay.
Sorana, on that note, Beckett sang a song, Love is the Answer. Love is the only answer. I remember
Yep.
that. You probably know that
Mhm.
song as well. But on that
Yes.
note, thank you so much for appearing on the Bubb Report this week.
Thank you for having me. Blessings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, Sorana Mitchell, published author. In fact, she just recently published her memoir. The title of the memoir is Still Smiling. And of course, what does the memoir do? It recounts traumatic experiences from childhood to present day. It includes her father's ultimate, untimely death in Grenada, sexual abuse on summer trips to Canada, immigration to the United States of America, mental illness, and her subsequent return to her homeland of Grenada. Viewers and listeners, please stand by. We will be back with the panel segment of the week.
Should your loved ones pass on, They deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Hello everyone, I am Chantal McGuire, your local bred Grenadian actuary and asset liability management expert. Are you satisfied with your current finances? Are you curious and constantly looking for ways to make additional income? Join me on the Bubb Report as we strive to empower you, our valued audience, to become more financially literate and help evolve Grenadians into a mindset that's investment focused and entrepreneurial. Literacy is about freedom. It's about being able to control your money and not letting your money control you. It's about foresight for a brighter future. Our core mission is to promote financial literacy and share money-generating opportunities for everyone. Join us on the last Sunday every month, starting July 30th, as we strive to provide the keys to financial freedom.
Viewers and listeners, we welcome you back to this week's episode of the Bubb Report. Now, for our panel segment of the week, it's actually broken up into two parts because we want to first have a conversation with Kanita Placide, who is of the Eastern Caribbean Alliance for Diversity and Equality. She is traveling at the moment, and so she was unable to join the rest of the panel for the conversation. So we will air the first part of the conversation that we had with her earlier this week, and the panel segment would come right after her conversation. We will be discussing the state of interpersonal, youth, and LGBTQ plus violence in Grenada and the OECS. Now, in the first half of 2023, Grenada recorded 12 homicides. At this time last year, Grenada only had 4 homicides recorded, suggesting an uptick in violence on the island. These murders also do not account for the number of citizens charged with the illegal possession of firearms. In a January 2023 town hall meeting, Prime Minister Sar Mitchell said, quote, "I want us to understand that our islands are under constant threat from the importation of small firearms in particular. They are coming in barrels, they are coming in containers, and don't be fooled. We are probably the last bastion of little or no gun violence in the region," unquote. One murder, which is still the subject of an active police investigation in St. George's, has polarized the national community because of who the individual is, and this will be the subject of our conversation today. On Sunday, June 18th, Jonty Robinson's body was found on the BBC beach in the south of the island, with a later autopsy suggesting strangulation. In his short life, Mr. Robinson was the subject of death threats, overt physical attacks, and other instances of discrimination in Grenada. Robinson, who is a past student of the Presentation Brothers College and an aspiring young musician, spoke ad nauseum about being treated as a second-class citizen in his own country. So, Kanita, welcome to the Bubb Report again.
Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure being here.
Absolutely. Now, in your last appearance on the Bubb Report, Kenita, you sounded a warning that public rhetoric around LGBTQ issues can actually lead to violence. Now, while this case in Grenada is still being investigated, can you talk to us about your initial gut reaction upon hearing about Jonty's untimely passing?
I mean, one of the things we have to look at is first, just the individual, bold, genuine, themselves. I think that when you look at someone who was just 24 years of age and found themselves with a voice that many persons did not know how to deal with. He was bold. He was out there. He did not hide who he was, who in his. I think it's a different flavor when you find someone who can just speak their mind around the issues that are happening, and that did not stop different levels of stigma, discrimination, and to the point violence, which he faced.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what we look at is when this news came to me, to be quite honest, it knotted my stomach. Where I was felt like it faded to the back. This was a young man for the last three into 4 years. We engaged on different issues. And I think that, his untimely demise, regardless of who or what the situation may be, was certainly, not good at all.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't deserve that. And I mean, no one deserves to be, taken out of this life in this kind of manner.
Mm-hmm.
And, really and truly, it leaves a very bitter feeling. But at this point, we are just hoping the authorities do what they need to in terms of a full investigation that leads to justice for his demise.
Now, you mentioned that you as an organization, and I'm sure that's an extension of what the work that GrenTrap does in Grenada. You've engaged, you engaged him. You said you engaged him over the years. What was the basis of that engagement? Why was there a need to engage him?
I mean, we engage persons from different islands that we see as leaders, so that we recognize that are free in themselves. We believe that, with very strong family support, he also engaged GrenTrap at different times. And so what you'd find is the intertwining of the work from national to regional allowed for that. Jonty is one who shared his story with me and my organization in terms of the different issues he have been through and where he is now. And I think what he wanted was to be able to excel as an artist, where people remember him as an artist and not necessarily someone based on his sexuality. His sexuality was just one aspect of him. But, in terms of looking at his skills and personality rather than his sexuality. And this was somebody who was in good, sound mind, who, the challenges of everyday living will always be there, but persevered and have moved through and continued to anchor those challenges and continue to live and exist.
Mm-hmm. Now, let us talk about the courage it takes to exist as an LGBTQ person in a socially conservative Caribbean society. I mean, you hear the narrative that people proffer that sexuality is a choice, and therefore you choose that quote unquote lifestyle. How does one choose to experience that kind of discrimination? It's something that I am always baffled by that notion.
And people who make those statements clearly are unaware and sometimes even less far from the truth as possible. I do not see an individual choosing to be a homosexual when, first of all, as a young person growing up in the Caribbean in the last couple of years, things have changed a bit in terms of where religion situates itself in your life. But when you grew up, you basically grew up being part of church. You grew up understanding, you go to Sunday school, you make your first communion, confirmation. All this is the path to giving your life to Christ. And even most of our schools, until recently, most of our schools were actually being administered or run by different churches. If you think about the most prominent schools in Grenada, still it's a Catholic school, or, associated with one of the churches or the other. And so it's not a case where you got away from it from home, church, or school. It was all around you. When you recognize that your sexuality is different from what they indicate it should be, there is first an internal war as to whether you can actually even think about it, acknowledge it, or whether you try to suppress it. And many persons try to suppress it as much as they can. But if most parents are actually watching their kids instead of being in denial, they would recognize that actually they themselves as parents probably knew something was different about the kid from time. They just didn't know what. But then when it push out, what you get conflicted with is where society say you should be, and where you are as an individual, and where your family supports you also depends on how much pressure or what they look at as acceptance from society and where they want to be seen. So what you have is persons, one, either connecting to this self and just saying this is part of me, but this is not all me, because your sexuality do not make up 100% of who you are. It's just one speck of an aspect, one aspect of you. And it's a tribulation for a lot of our persons growing up. Now what you see in this era, when young people identify this, you are seeing young people from whatever ages saying, no, this is not who I'm attracted to, this is where I'm at. And they are verbalizing it, compared to before, where people were more quiet and subtle about it and trying not to undo the status quo. But that no longer sits. So whereas you'd see persons who are over 40 still trying to walk that line of what society says and thinks it should be, you find persons who are of the age of 30 and younger now saying, no, we are not doing this. We are not trying to be, in most cases, they are not trying to live double lives. They are not trying to pretend that this does not exist and this is who they are. And persons would recognize, when people think that this is a life choice, no one gets up on a morning and just decides that, oh, I'm attracted to a man. No one gets up on the morning and just decide, I'm attracted to a woman. That is an internal path and growth one goes through. And I think when I think about it, heterosexual people have to stop this, because no one actually asked you who you would have been attracted to at any point in your life. There was just a natural narrative that says, oh, I'm attracted to him. I want him to be my husband. And that would be the natural path for a lot of gay persons as well. Homosexuality is something that is not all life choices. And yes, I would admit that at times you can look at situations that has happened in the past that could have led to a choice. But all the women who have been abused, whether it's incest, rape, or whatever, did not become lesbians. All the men who are abused do not continue to be abusers themselves. And so we also have to look at where that narrative does not sit. And therefore, it should not be an umbrella narrative thinking that the entire population sits one place. When we talk about the mental health of people, and I think that's something that's going to touch deeply, is that when one comes to a point of accepting themselves, the biggest issue they have would be society and family, whether they also accepts this person. All of a sudden, the person you knew as a baby, the person you gave birth to, the person that you have known from time in the community because you know their sexuality is different, you start treating them differently, and that's wrong. Their sexuality does not change the individual that you always loved or you always knew. And people need to get that out of their heads. His death has sparked a lot of conversation, not just in Grenada, but across the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. And every time, I would tell you, as somebody who sits in St. Lucia, every time a person is murdered, it tears part of me. You know why? Because they are murdered simply on stupidity, ignorance, misunderstanding of the truth. You cannot dehumanize an individual because of their sexuality. You cannot dehumanize someone because it makes you feel that you have the higher moral authority. Because at the end of the day, we are all human beings. And the most we can do is respect each other. We don't have to necessarily accept everything around each other, but we do need to respect each other. And if we had any level of respect, it means that today probably he would still be here talking about where he wants to be as an artist. Mm-hmm. And the mental health people go through, I would just say this.
Yes.
Half of this have to do with the levels of stigma and discrimination they face. It's not even about themselves and their sexuality. People treat them, whether it be where they live, where they go to school, where they work, how their family support or not support, all of them things is what cause mental health issues. But not everybody have mental health issues on a general basis in terms of how they may want to associate mental health disorder with homosexuality. Homosexuality is not a disorder.
And then there's some who would say that there's some who liken it to pedophilia, which I am not too sure where they make or conflate the two. You know, those are two separate things.
I think if they really look at it, to be quite honest, Kalon, we have to look at the facts, and we have to see that a lot of our girls and boys that are being hurt are not being hurt by persons in the LGBT community. They are being hurt by persons that are respected and considered to be straight and married and so on and so forth. But those are not spoken about. We are also having to look at the fact that even with, and this is kind of the cluster, Jonty is not a John Doe. Jonty belonged to a mother. He's a son. He's a brother. He's a cousin. He's family. And so when people say, let's protect our children, who are protecting those who are different, that are cast away? You understand? Right now, I feel more than people realize for the family. The family is lost. The mother who have to go to bury her son. No parent should have to bury their child. Because as it was designed, the child should be burying the parents. If we want to hold on to the Bible. But we only want to hold on for certain things. And it don't matter how it happened or who did it. The fact is, a life was taken. A life was taken, and a life have to be accounted for. The parents of this young man, the family of this young man is in turmoil. They are hurting. They have no idea how to cope with this sudden death. And people out there talking a lot of nonsense. But I think that in fairness and honesty, we have to look at how our reactions and behaviors sometimes are more painful and damaging to an individual's life than it is supporting or helpful. And with that, I say that the consciousness of how we support in a society, we are so used to rumors and bacchanal that sometimes we forget that we need to connect to people, because at some point, every day, everyone could be vulnerable. Today, it might be the LGBT community under the scrutiny. Tomorrow, we have no idea which is the subset of people that will now be. Before, where you're powerful, you now become a vulnerable person in this group. You understand? Vulnerability changes.
where you are today may not be where you are tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that in background research I learned about Jonty, it was that whenever he reported the instances of attacks against him, or the bullying or the death threats to law enforcement in Grenada, he indicated that they pretty much were very dismissive. In fact, one of the things that he shared with me personally on one occasion was that they needed for him to submit a medical report, I believe, in order before moving forward with pressing charges against the individuals who were threatening his life at that time. But I want you to talk about law enforcement, the role of law enforcement, and the challenges that LGBTQ people face when they report these instances of harassment and bullying in their communities to institutions that are supposed to are designed to protect everyone.
The responsibility of the police is to protect and serve. And to serve the community means that they are engaging, they are listening, they are responding. We also know that, and I'll put it this very quickly, not all police officers are able to separate their role as police officers and their duty to protect and serve and the moral compass of their association with religion, or where they see homosexuality in relation to this. What you also have is, and more often than not, this is why we say, because of the buggery law, gross indecency, or act against nature, whichever way it's written in the Constitution, sometimes it's difficult for LGBT persons to make a report, because they do understand that by making that report, you actually expose yourself, one. Two, the police may not take you seriously. Three, they may make fun of you. Four, that report, even if assumed to be taken, if you go back for a copy of it, it's non-existent. And as a matter of fact, they might make this more about you than the report itself, which also, admitting that you are a practicing homosexual, can also hand you, can find you, land you in jail.
A criminal liability because of the buggery laws. Yes.
Thank you very much. And so this is where the difficulty comes. But what has also been done over the last couple of years was a sensitization training that has been ongoing with the police. And what we had to do with the police was let them understand the terminology some people use, because that might be foreign to them. Let them understand the realities of the persecution on the ground of different groups and why some groups might be shouting out. And one of the things we also had to explain was the fact that at no time was the LGBT community ever asking for new rights or additional rights. All they are simply saying is protect us the same as you protect everybody else under the Constitution. Give us the same rights as everyone else under the Constitution, because people who do not feel it do not know it. That when the LGBT community gets discriminated and gets stigmatized, it also reduces access to a number of things. Things that we take for pleasure.
I want you to stick a pin there, because I want to cite a report, a Human Rights Watch report from 2018. And in that report, it said that Human Rights Watch and ECAID found that discrimination and stigma against LGBT people seeps into everyday activities, including access to services such as healthcare, school or public transportation, or social activities such as going to the movies or shopping. Some said they had changed their lifestyle and behavior to avoid contact with hostile members of their family, church, or community. Some opted to socialize only with a few trusted friends in the safety of their homes. Unquote. I just wanted to add that to give context to this report titled Eastern Caribbean LGBT People Face Bias and Violence. But please proceed.
No, and I mean the biggest aspect of the of the violence that, and people do not recognize its violence, is the verbal harassment. And some people get it more than others, particularly the men. And so for Jonty being able to be free and visible in Grenada, it was something that we monitored, because we know as a young person being this open on social media, but also publicly, there were many who loved him, but we also know there were many who didn't. And so it's one of the reasons we were monitoring as things progress. And, you know, it's unfortunate. I think I landed in Toronto when I got message that this had happened. And there I shared it with, ministers of government in Toronto to see the demise of this young man. It's something that is hard and something that our organization, EKID, is going to feel hard, because we saw him as an up-and-coming star and, mover and shaker in Grenada. And so this is really a hard one. And, I'm not sure, Kellen, you have reached out to the family at all, but I think it is something that in his honor and previous conversations, if you haven't, please do. I think the family needs all the support possible. This is a hard one for any mother to take. And I take this because you know what we have had. And I'll take it from Senusha from 2005. Each time I had to bury a young man, I had to hear the parents, especially the mother, cry out for their son. And we are losing a lot of sons in this battle. But we are losing the sons because of fear and ignorance. Because someone is a homosexual does not mean they are not human, and people need to stop.
What impact is this having on the mental health? What are you hearing in respect of the mental health of people in the community? Of course, we know that this is an active investigation, and the circumstances surrounding the outcome of the investigation may change once all of the facts are laid bare. But what impact does that have, that kind of violence have, in your experience, on the community?
I mean, initially, offset would be fear. The idea that you do not know who did it, why they do it, the fact that, and I mean, I could tell you in all the deaths that I have seen, it is done around letting your guard down to just think that you're okay, because it becomes a little personal. What we have is within the community initially is fear, but it's also pain for those who knew him, for those who engaged with him. Some would just know about him, for those who followed him online. I mean, there are different levels, right? But I think the fear and pain is the first two things that immediately hit, and not being sure of what's next. The next thing that comes is the tribulation of understanding whether the justice system will actually succeed or fail. In other countries, they have failed us. And so we're hoping Grenada is one country it does not fail, and they can actually bring this case to justice.
Okay. Now, for resources for people in the community who might, for example, want to get out of Dodge, as they say, to leave their home countries, what options are there for them to find safety, whether that's in the Caribbean, or if they can afford perhaps to travel to other countries to seek asylum? What's that process like?
I mean, in the Caribbean, there's a free movement of people between the OECS countries.
Yes.
And so there's already a free movement. There's not much. I mean, I knew Grenchap immediately after the death did put out a condolences and did indicate counseling was available for persons who just wanted to talk. I know the family have already done a vigil on the location he was found. Grenchap is also doing a small vigil with the community themselves For persons who just want to find support and talk, and just talk about their interaction with him, I find that is also a healing space for people to just talk about their encounters with the individuals. In terms of moving further, I think there are different protocols in place in terms of moving. But the one thing I do tell people is there's a oxymoron in asylum. There's one where in your country you are criminalized because of your sexuality, but in another country you may go to, you might be a target because of the color of your skin. So I would say do the homework, understand what it is before you make a hard decision. But if persons still decide that they want to leave, reach out to Grenchap, and they will find out the process of that. It's not an easy step because you leave everything you know and everyone you know behind. And going through the systems are not always easy. Asylum is not usually the first thing I tell people, but this is why we fight so hard in the Caribbean to create a society that is understanding and respectful, that we do not necessarily have to have further brain drain. Because what you also have is good educated people with good skills also leaving for the global north. So we as a Caribbean have put through all this energy to educate people, and then the global north is what's going to be getting all the experience of their work. So let us not lose more people. Let's just put things right in our countries where there can be a coexistence without the fight, without the discrimination. And more importantly, leaders across the region, religious frat, let us put a statement out denouncing all level of violence. It's not just the LGBT community. We need to stop violence. And if you're condoning violence to the LGBT people, that means you're continuing the crusade of violence. So let's stop. Let's start here. Against the LGBT persons, against youth, against older people, against people with disability. Let's put it out against everyone. Let's stop the violence. That's what I would like to see. The leadership from both government and religious leaders come out, stop the violence. Let's put it out there. Because when they kill one LGBT person, you think it's just an LGBT person, but that is somebody's son. That is somebody's child. That is part of a family. And I think that is the part that they are missing out. It is still it's still broken. The system is broken. So let's fix it.
Let us fix it. And on that note, you're very impassioned there. Any final comments before we get to the rest of the panel?
I think to the panel that's going to be speaking about the mental health and, the religious leaders, I think I would like to see some leadership. And so as they go further into conversation, let us just remember to humanize this individual and every individual that identifies under this acronym, because it doesn't change the fact that, one, they are still human, two, they are still citizens of Grenada or the OECS by extension. And I think that leadership from all political parties, whether elected or opposition, whether it be the evangelical churches, Christian churches, 7 Days Adventists, whatever it may be, I think that we have to stand and fight against three things: stigma, discrimination, violence. And at some point, all those leaders that I've called out understand what violence can do, and therefore should be at the table negotiating this.
Okay. Kanita, thank you so very much for appearing on the Bubb Report this week. And I know that you're busy, so we're very appreciative that you were able to take the time to join us.
Thank you very much for having me. And to Jonty's family, friends, associates, it's a hard loss. And just say that Eastern Caribbean Alliance from Diversity and Equality from Sinusha, we connect with you, we give our condolences, and we are here.
Kanita, proceed, viewers and listeners. Kanita, proceed. We would take a quick break and return with the conversation that includes the rest of the panel for this segment. Please stand by.
This is a blessing that is more than just music. It is monumental, not just for me, but also for the LGBTQ community. I've had a lot of obstacles. I had to jump through hoops that I never even thought I could have jumped through. When I started music, I really wanted to be able to showcase my talent in the best way possible. I never really had the opportunity to do that because of the homophobia that I was facing in Grenada. Not many people wanted to work with me or be associated with me, but it did not stop me from achieving my goals. I moved to Barbados and I wanted to create a song, and Michael and Stefan took me under their wing and gave me this incredible opportunity where I can literally create anything that I want. And I'm very, very honored to be a part of this. My album, Rebel, it's the first project that I've ever done, and I hope that you enjoy all of the songs and everything that I've done for this project. And I'm looking forward to the future, to create more music and more collaborations, and to write more and to just express myself in the best way possible. Thank you.
Panelists, let me take this opportunity to now welcome you to the Bubb Report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Reverend James, I believe this is your first time appearing on the program. So it's certainly a pleasure to have you here. Yes,
it is.
Absolutely. Now, Reverend James, I want to begin with you because, of course, as someone who is responsible for the pastoral care of a flock of Christian believers, of course, LGBTQ issues is something that you have spoken about, especially publicly during the course of the referendum. In fact, perhaps you came in for heavy criticism for, I suppose, a position of tolerance that you adopted on the issue. So, Reverend James, talk to us a bit, if you will, about your faith position in respect of the treatment of LGBTQ people, who also might be people of faith as well.
Okay. Well, I view myself not as a pastor of Christians only, but as a pastor of the community. So anyone who needs pastoral care can come to me, whether they are Christians or not, whether they are straight or gay. My responsibility is to present a face of Christ in this world. So my approach to everyone has been an approach of acceptance and of love.
Okay, and that has always been, what inspires that approach?
It's my own theology, my understanding of God in Christ, and what are the responsibilities of Christians. We may not have the same beliefs. We may not belong to the same denomination. But one of the things that we are called to do is to love all persons. We are told that God causes his rain to fall on the just as well as on the unjust. I also believe that my responsibility is always to get to know the individual before I can make any pronouncements or any statements about that person, whether to like that person or not. I have to get to know the individual. It does not matter what the individual is engaged in, but if I get to know him or her, I may get to understand from where that person is coming.
Mm-hmm. But you say it does not matter, but of course, your Bible, the Bible that Christians follow, may say, and of course, there are more, I suppose, conservative Christians who may say, well, you say it does not matter, but the Bible prescribes a particular set of a dogma that people should follow. So even if people might come, that you might see the individual as a person, there are particular moral codes that individual has to follow as well.
It depends on how you understand scripture.
Mhm.
There is the letter of the law, and then there's the spirit of the law. I tend to always go with the spirit of the law, and I would always err on the side of love. Also, the Bible may have some instances where it speaks about homosexual relationships. However, the Bible speaks very, very clearly about sin. And the Bible does not speak just about one kind of sin. There are some sins that people don't take note of. For instance, in Galatians chapter 5 and verse 19 and 20, there is a list of sins that the Bible speaks about, and Paul says if one engages in those sins habitually, that person would never enter the kingdom of God. And those sins involve anger, they involve jealousy, all of these. So we cannot just say, okay, because somebody's engaging in an act that we disapprove of, that they cannot be loved, they cannot be received, they cannot be dealt with. Now, this is not saying that I accept a behavior, but I always make a distinction between an activity and an orientation. So the act of intercourse, male intercourse with each other in Grenada, if discovered, is still on the books as a crime. So I know what is spoken about is the act and not the orientation. And you have people who are victimized because of their orientation. And sometimes we don't make the effort to understand from where that person is coming, what caused them to be that way.
Mhm. Now, Reverend James, Grenada tends to pride itself as a Christian nation, even though the country is not governed as a religious theocracy. At least in my understanding of Grenada's constitutional construct, there are the principles of the separation of powers. Religious leaders are not the head of government, as it is in Iran and Saudi Arabia. Now, while many were shocked at Jonty's death, there were some elements in the national community who cited biblical verses as the basis for just being nonchalant and, in some cases, quite frankly, celebrating the death of another human being. What role, Reverend James, does Christianity play in eliciting such strong reactions? Because many of those people will tell you that they are expressing their deeply held faith principles.
I have gone on record publicly as saying that Grenada is not a Christian nation. Grenada is a nation in which the predominant faith is Christianity. Christianity in Grenada is primarily cultural. So I make a distinction between cultural Christianity and authentic Christianity.
Mhm.
In Romans chapter 12, verse 9 and following, Paul lists a number of characteristics or marks of the authentic Christian. And it speaks about if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him to drink. So the Bible prescribes a particular way that we must treat every single human being who has been created by God. And that's the position that I have always taken and I continue to take.
So you're establishing some nuance there. You're talking about Grenada is culturally Christian, but not necessarily Christianity in its true form. Is that what I hear you saying?
Exactly. I define a Christian as a follower of Christ, one whose behaviors, one whose actions are informed by Christ. And when Jesus was on the cross, he looked down at those people who had crucified him and he said, Father, forgive them. When Peter betrayed Jesus, one of the first persons for whom Jesus asked on his resurrection was Peter when he said to the ladies, go tell the disciples and Peter. He was saying, look, even though you have done something as terrible as denying me, I want you to know that I forgive you. I do not believe that we have a right to condemn anyone. That is the responsibility of God. I think what we can do is to love people, engage them in conversation, discover from where they're coming, and allow the Holy Spirit of God to make whatever changes that needs to be made in that person, if the Spirit of God determines that that change has to be made.
And I want to bring in our anonymous guest here. I call them John Doe. Of course, they go by Jake. But John Doe, the first reaction that many had to Jonty's death before knowing all of the facts of the case, of course, the caveat here is that it is still an active investigation, was that Jonty might have been murdered. Why do you think many came to that first conclusion?
Quite simply because I believe what was it 2021, someone made an attempt on his life. First they hit him in the head with a bottle, and then they chased him around with a cutlass, and it was on video. And then the police when Jonty went to the police, they made up some excuse that they needed a medical medical incident report, which then took a month to get because the doctor was always not available. And then after the month, and he brought it to them, they finally made reports, arrested the guy, brought him in for questioning. He admitted it, even though during the weeks up to the end of that month, he was boasting about how he almost killed Jonty and he was trying to kill him. And then the case, there was supposed to be a case, but the case didn't go anywhere, and the guy was just let out scot-free. Yeah, it was 2021 summer. Yeah.
Summer 2021. And what month was that?
I'm gonna be honest, I can't remember, but it was definitely 2021.
So talk to us. You said that he was chased around with a cutlass. He was injured in the process. The police said that they needed a medical report. Was that individual ever charged?
I'm being honest, just going on by what Jonty told me at the time when he was alive, but there was supposed to be a case, and then the case went nowhere, and they pushed back the dates or something, and the guy was let out on his own reconnaissance.
So there were so he was let out. Okay, so also talk to us about, because you said that Jonty confided in you many instances of discrimination that he experienced in Grenada. Who did he experience that from? Is it when he was walking on the street? What did that look like?
Honestly, it was basically his whole life, from his parents at home verbally and physically abusing him, to when he was walking down the street getting pelted with stones and being verbally assaulted and being cussed out for being who he was. Then there was when he was trying to support himself and get a job. He was working at a perfume place. I can't remember the exact name, but it was at the airport. And this one woman or manager or whatever, she would constantly verbally abuse him until he just stood up for himself, and then she has grounds to fire him. And this wasn't even the first time that he's had a harassment at his place of employment. Then we worked at BB's Crab Shack, where his boss where he told me his boss would get drunk a lot, and he'd have to, and the boss's son would basically never show up for work or just screw around, and then he'd have to do like most of the work, and then his boss would come to work, verbally abuse him, and one time his boss got so drunk he punched him in the face, and then he quit. And this was while he was living in his boss's car, because he lost his second job at the place at the airport, and he couldn't support himself in an apartment that was close enough to where he was working. And the thing about it is, from what you told me, the boss that runs BB Crab Shack is a family friend of his. And then there was the weeks leading up to his death, where he was working at what was it, aquarium, and where I think the owner was a family friend, another family friend, I think his godfather. I can't remember. I can't remember the exact relation. A German gentleman or something. And the person managing the restaurant under the owner would constantly be on his back. He would, she, yeah, it was a she. She would insult him because of sexuality, tell him that, if it was up to her, she'd fire him, like constantly harass him, to the point where he would come home in tears, and he was just constantly being harassed and under threat. But he needed a job. He needed a job desperately to support himself.
What I'm hearing you saying is that he did experience some level of homelessness in Grenada as well.
Yeah, I know for sure he was living. When around the time I got to know him, he was living in his boss's car because he didn't want to go by his mom, because his mom would verbally abuse him, tell him things, try and squeeze him for money, that kind of thing. Like he couldn't catch a break on any level of society. His family failed him. The police failed him. The government failed him. He couldn't count. He could barely count on anybody except for maybe a few close friends.
Okay. All right. And of course, we will get back to you, but I want to bring back Reverend James in this conversation. Reverend James, one of the things that on background I learned about you is that while you were in the city of New York, you worked with the LGBTQ community. Could you talk to us about that experience, and how did that experience inform your theological perspective on issues of on LGBTQ issues?
Okay. Well, I did clinical pastoral education at an institution in New York called the Healthcare Chaplaincy. And as part of my training, I was placed in 2 hospitals. At one hospital, I work almost exclusively with persons who were living with HIV and AIDS. And among those persons were persons of the homosexual persuasion. The training I received was an interfaith training, which means that I work with persons and minister to persons who were Jews, Muslim, Baha'is, and of different denominational affiliation within the Christian umbrella. And so one of the things that I learned was tolerance, that you do not have to believe as a person believes to be able to be kind, to be able to love them. So I've learned to try to listen and to try to understand from where the person is coming. I also know that within Christianity, there are a number of things that the Bible calls sin that many Christians engage in, yet nobody tries to kill them. Nobody tries to beat them up. And for many of them, it's okay, but in the eyes of God, sin is sin. And I look at sin as missing the mark. In Romans 3:23, it says that we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, which means we miss the standard, we miss the mark that God has set for us. Yet God so loved us that he sent his only begotten son to die for us. That includes people like Jonty.
Mm-hmm. You said that includes people like Jonty. That is a powerful statement there.
Yes, everyone. Mm-hmm. God loves every single person. You know, Jonty did not make Jonty himself. God made him. And before Jonty came out, before Jonty discovered that he had a different persuasion, God knew it. Yet God made him.
Some of your faith colleagues might have a different opinion on that. They may say that that's not of God because it's an abomination. Deuteronomy expressly speaks to that.
You are speaking about an act. I'm speaking about a person.
Okay.
I make a big distinction between the act and the person.
But and the reason I ask that is because I do not think people do that, especially in the context of socially conservative societies. There's a tendency to conflate the two.
Right, right. But as I said, there are a number of acts that people practice that the Bible condemns. And not just homosexuality, this homosexual act, I should say. Not just that, it condemns adultery, it condemns fornication, it even condemns thinking about an act in your mind that you would commit if you had opportunity to commit.
Okay, okay. How do we get to a place of tolerance? Now, whenever people bring up notions of tolerance, there is the idea that you are trying to force an ideology down someone's throat. You're trying to force someone to accept someone's sexual orientation, which they call a lifestyle. How do we get to a place in society where you can say, you know what, this is what you believe. I don't necessarily have to agree with that, but it is your right to exist. It's your right to believe and exist.
I think a lot depends on the kind of education we provide in our schools. It starts with the young, helping the young to understand that we are not all the same. You have discrimination. I worked, I was one of the founder members of the Grenada AIDS Foundation when it existed. And I remember at one time, a funeral director saying that if he had known better, since it was my colleague, Dr. McBurnett, and I who went to speak with him, that person would have died from AIDS because of our involvement.
Yeah, the internet connection there. But I want you to repeat everything you said about being a member of the Grenada AIDS Foundation, because we totally lost all of that.
I was saying that.
I'm sorry about that. Yes, go ahead.
No problem. I was one of the charter members of the Grenada AIDS Foundation. And those were early days of working with people with HIV and AIDS. And I remember our hosting a conference for persons with HIV and AIDS, and not making a distinction as to whether the people were homosexual or whether they were just persons living with HIV and AIDS. I remember a young lady, about 21, coming from St. Lucia, and I gave her a hug. That's a time when people did not do those things. I also sat with a guy who was dying from AIDS in the hospital. When the nurses would not even shave him, I took a razor and I shaved him and I held his hands while he was dying. So my experience may be different from other ministers, but the discrimination that you had with persons with HIV and AIDS is not unlike the kind of discrimination you had against people in biblical time who had leprosy. Yet my model, Jesus Christ, reached out to those people with leprosy, even though it was not the popular thing to do. Religious leaders thought these people are unclean and they were supposed to be sent outside of the city. Yet Jesus made the effort to reach out to them. and I take my cue from Jesus Christ.
Let us talk about that period of the AIDS epidemic in the world, and how that are we talking here of the late 80s, early 90s, Grenada?
Yes, yes, late 80s, early 90s, because I did my training in the United States in just the late 90s, but I had been part of the Grenada AIDS Foundation before going to do my clinical training.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I do remember hearing stories around that time about, not sharing a cup with, someone, not drinking from the same fountain that they drank in. There was a lot of a lot of scare at that time, but a lot of it was also linked to LGBTQ issues, because the conversation was, the narrative was that that was a gay disease, and
Yes, that was
that was a
brought on by
curse. That
God.
was
Yes.
God's curse. Did you hear the same
Yes.
narratives in Grenada as well?
Yes, I heard that. And there were a number of people who were joining our organization, not because they cared about the persons who were living with AIDS, but because they wanted to witness to them, to convert them before they died. So
What is your position on proselytizing? Did I say that correctly, Reverend?
proselytizing, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I can speak about my church's position on this, because it is stated in our book of order that we do not proselytize. We do not try to get people from other churches to join our church. We do not take advantage of problems in other churches to pull people into our church. People come into our church because they know someone, or because they visited and they like it. But yes, we don't. We also use friendship and lifestyle evangelism as our means of attracting people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what do you say to people in your pews, or in any church pew, quite frankly, who might not necessarily openly identify as LGBTQ, but are members of churches? That there is the tendency to think that LGBTQ people only exist in the secular realm, when that's not necessarily the case.
That's not necessarily the case. And some people are reticent to say what their orientation is because they know of the reaction. But I have someone who calls me, with whom I'm very close, a female, who has admitted to me that she's of a different persuasion. That has never, ever changed my relationship with her.
Mm-hmm. What do
I
you say?
continue.
So is that, if you don't mind me asking, is that someone that's in your congregation?
Not in my congregation,
Okay.
but someone that I have known ever since they were a teenager.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you think, though, that organized religion and faith has a role to play in people not identifying as their true selves? I mean, there is the notion of a sort of a down low phenomenon, especially in socially conservative societies, where, because of the backlash that people receive, they would not necessarily come out publicly to say who they are. But there's also public health components to that as well, especially when you're not necessarily honest with yourself, living that sort of double life there. That can have some public health, sexual health implications as well.
Yeah. While I understand and appreciate that, we have to understand the culture in which we live. People are not yet ready for this, and I do not think it ought to be foisted on them. There have been attempts to cause governments and societies to wholesale accept certain behaviors. And I think that has to be gradual. You cannot force it on people. yes, I say Grenada is not a Christian nation, but it is culturally Christian. And therefore, it would have certain reticence into openly accepting certain behaviors. So I think we have to understand that. But what we can do is to work with our people about tolerance. I may not believe as you believe, I may not practice as you practice, but I can love you and I can wish you well and seek your best interests.
Reverend, any final comments? Because I want to respect your time. In respect of the Jonty incident there, of course, we know that is an active investigation, but a second autopsy confirmed strangulation, that in fact he was in fact killed. Any final comments?
Well, just to say that I'm sorry that he has died and has died in that way. And if it is because of his orientation, then it is a terrible indictment on the person or persons who are responsible. And my sympathy goes out to his family. And if there's any way that I can be of assistance in terms of just listening and counseling, I'm available.
Okay. Reverend James, thank you so much for appearing on the Bubb Report this week.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hope we can have further conversations on this. In fact, we tried to reach Bishop Harvey, but this has been a very busy week for Bishop Harvey, because I believe your position and Bishop Harvey's position tends to be the same there. So it would be an interesting conversation to have in the future. So thank you again, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Viewers and listeners, what we will do now is we will take a quick break, and we will be back with this conversation following the untimely and tragic passing of Jonty Josiah Robinson. Please stand by.
Listeners, I see Michael already smiling. He anticipates what I would say. My good friend.
Yeah, and I put my head on a block, and I offer Mr. Brother Bishop the scalpel to cut it off.
The political leader has said several times up to last night that is not a reflection of her personal views or the views of the party. And you understand, George, how elections at the party level work.
So, Dr. Pei, do you have ties? Do you have ties to the National Democratic Congress, Dr. Pei? Or rather, were you commissioned by the NDC to do this poll?
Information because it seems interesting that a lot of your advice is very consistent with what was said. Brilliant.
And Claudette, good luck with everything.
You too, man. May the best candidate win in the town of St. George.
Kill on.
Yes.
You is a young man too, so stop it. Tell everybody you are a young man too.
We are a people who have always aspired for more. We've always aspired to do better. We've always accepted that not because your mother didn't go to secondary school, you should go. It has always been the other way around. You should aspire.
You've been there for a long time. Want to be queen of St. Andrews, but yet the problems around you you're not seeing. You can pray yourself out of the problems in St. Andrews.
And if you're not careful with how and what you say on radio, you will cause people to fight here.
I thrive on that controversy. Some people hate it, but I love it. In other words, every time something goes viral, it's about Kem Jones.
Some persons were getting pension after 2 terms in office, right? And the persons that work for 26 years plus not getting anything. It's just unfair.
God is good, and God looks after me. You know, not just my wife is no longer here, so both herself and the father up there are looking after me very, very well indeed.
Not a few people that you pick up by the side of the road to run an election, to run in an election. These are not people that you mustered up and you pulled together a few months before you think an election is going to call, and you say we want to win an election, so let's come together.
But we want to continue this conversation here with our John Doe, who goes by the name of Jake. Jake, so tell me, in your own experience in Grenada, did you also, because of your association with Jonty, experience discrimination?
There was one incident. I was by where Jonty was living, and I was coming down the road, and I saw that this other guy was what was it? He was shouting at him and threatening to kill him. So I rushed down, and I got between him and the other guy, and the guy threatened to kill me as well. And he was shouting expletives and whatnot. This was on a hill where at the last place Jonty lived. That was sometime either spring or summer. No, sorry, it was like spring last year, I believe, or maybe it was late 2021. But the hate in that man's eyes, it was insane. He was like, he was crazy. He was threatening to chop him, and then he threatened to chop me and kill me, and because I was defending Jonty. And I literally thought this man was insane. And this guy was working for some Arab or Middle Eastern cement company or something that was just by where Jonty lived. And to be honest, I still feel a little stressed from remembering that incident, because I've never encountered anything like that before.
Did you report that incident to the police?
I mean, I didn't really bother for myself, but I did ask Jonty to do it. But at that point, Jonty was basically fed up with the police. And to be honest, the police, he must have reported to the police many a times where his life was threatened. But they would either, I remember one time on his way home from some kind of party, someone tried to sexually assault him. And then I was woken up in the middle of the night. He told me to ask me to come pick him up. I rushed to him, and I found him. He was almost like in a zombie-like state. I was wondering what happened, and we suddenly walked back to his place, and honestly, he looked like he was about to just want to jump off the roof. He was just so in shock. So I convinced him to go to the hospital to get tested. Somehow report to the police. Somehow, I believe someone from the police station must have leaked the story and to some people, and everyone was joking about the attempted sexual assault. And Jonty himself told me about somebody trying to get his STD results, his HIV results, by saying they're from some organization or something or the other.
They call them? I mean, I'm trying to understand.
Well, they went to the hospital and they asked for the results because they said there was some kind of organization or something that deals with HIV, or like I don't know. I mean, that's something Jonty said. I don't know if Jonty heard that from somebody, but that's what he told me that happened. He was in the spotlight all the time because he was trying to do things with the arts, and he was trying to. And
in one of his demo reels, I call it a demo reel on his Facebook profile page, he talks about Grenadian producers and other artists refusing to work with him. Can you talk to us about his attempts to get into that scene and the challenges that he had?
He always had to cut his music either in Barbados, or he knew a guy that came down from New York or something who rented a studio, and he cut music with him, a white guy. But no, from as far as I know, no local, in the beginning at least, no local studio would work with him. When he tried to get singing engagements at hotels and whatnot, they were all afraid that they'd get attacked or something because they'd have an openly LGBT singer on their roster, and the one guy that was in charge of that was the main guy for getting gigs and stuff around the island. Apparently, he didn't like him either because of who he was, or because some people spread accusations that he was difficult to work with or something, and that turned him negative on Jonty. But all in all, my thing is, right, the same businesses like Aquarium, BB's Crabback, all these places that turned down when he wanted to just sing and perform to make an honest living. These are the same places that take SU students, some of whom might be just like Jay, but because it's foreign money, they're ready to bow down and kiss these foreigners' feet. Whereas when their own, they want to cast them to the waves. I mean, the thing that gets me is, right, they know very well, especially Aquarium. A lot of SG students go there, and the same manager who probably was vilifying Jonty she'd probably see a gay or lesbian couple and kiss their butt and to get a tip and whatnot, and treat them so nice because they have that student loan money to go spend at their restaurants. I don't think they deserve it. I don't think, honestly, the way the thing that gets me is Jonty, he loved his country and he loved his family, but they didn't love him enough back. In fact, I doubt for the most part they didn't love him at all. It's just disgusting. Like it's honestly, just if I had to describe his experience, I mean, I would describe it as either Jim Crow or apartheid. It was so bad. Buses would literally skip him. Even though they were half full. There were times where he would be walking in the rain and he'd be at the station, a bus would just skip him and they'd laugh at him and call him faggot. Like that's just something I see in those old fashioned movies about how racism is bad and prejudice is bad in other countries. And then I know for a fact that I've seen foreigners, even black foreigners who are LGBT, come there, and the staff and so on that would spit at Jonty when he comes to go and eat at a restaurant or something, or would giggle and laugh at him and make fun of him. They treat the staff, they treat those people from foreign like America and UK way better. So I think it's not just the homophobia; it's also the mindset that, oh, these are Yankees, these are Brits, they coming with foreign cash. Let me not mess with them. But I bet you that if we can make what Jonty said, if we can just put a spotlight on it, a lot of these people would think twice before coming down to Grenada. Because honestly, I don't think Grenada deserves the tourism cash they're getting. I mean, it's just disgusting. I mean, like, I'm sorry, I'm just at a loss for words. I mean, and it's not just that. I've also noticed something very sinister, that there are some gay people that are local in Grenada that get treated because they're light skin or they're white, that they're actual Grenadians, but because they're light skin, they're white, they get treated better, or they just get ignored or just laughed off. But Jonty, I mean, yeah, he was a beautiful man and everything, but he was a dark-skinned man. And honestly, I feel there's an element of colorism and racism there too. And I come from a country where I'm also West Indian. I come from a country where there's a lot of racism. racism and colorism and classism is very mixed as well. And it's bad in my country too, but I've seen it at extreme levels in Grenada as well. So all this stuff about Grenada sweet and all are we and all this stuff, but I mean, yeah, it's a facade.
Okay,
And,
so what? No,
yeah.
go ahead, please, go ahead.
And personally, I don't really blame the church or anything. This is just me, because I'm gonna be honest. Most West Indians, they don't go to church. I mean, hell, I'm Catholic. I barely go to church. It's just used as a cover for. I feel like the issue is that we live in an economically depressed area, and instead of dealing with the real issues of the lack of opportunity and whatnot, and the poor public services like our schools and whatnot, they're just scapegoating people like Jonty to make themselves feel better. Like, I mean, the man who tried to kill him the first time, he was just, from my understanding, he was some kind of loser on the street who lived out his car, or was sometimes was crashed by his mom. The man didn't have a job, and it seems like most of these people that hated Jonty didn't have a job, or were like in the service industry, and they have to deal with all the stresses of being treated like servants, and then they look for the most helpless person to pick on. Honestly, it kind of disgusts me that this is true, but I can't think of any other reason why it would matter to them so much.
Well, some might say it would matter to them so much because, as you've heard the Reverend there, Grenada is still culturally Christian. So even though you say that a lot of people don't necessarily go to church, they're very quick-witted with respect to quoting Bible verses. So
I'm gonna be honest, the same people I see quoting the Bible, I mean, they don't. I mean, yeah, okay, maybe some of them really do cling to the Bible, but a lot of them, as far as I'm concerned, they probably just read some Bible verses off some internet website about how faggots are bad and blah 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 blah, and then they just run with it to make themselves look good. I think the main issue is that it's just a way to hide their lack of substance in themselves as human beings. But again, I'm just giving my perspective. He always wanted to be the first person to represent Grenada, like, on the world stage. Like, he complained about Grenada a lot sometimes, but when he was frustrated. But at the end of the day, if you cut it, he'd bleed the national colors. He loved everything having to do with British culture. Like, he spoke a little bit Welsh. Like, was taught by his stepdad. Oh yeah, he loved the royal family. He loved the Crown. He'd always watch it every season. I think he watched the last season that passed there. At times he could be a little bit too trusting, but he always wanted to see the good in people, even the good in me when I myself was going through some things. And he was very talented. Like, all the music he put out, he wrote, and he had a amazing ear for music. He loved Rihanna, and he really wanted to try and make it in the music industry. I mean, honestly, there was some. I would say that if he lived long enough, he could have been for Grenada what Rihanna was for Barbados. He was that gifted. The problem is he didn't really have much familial or societal support. Especially his family, they just throw bootstraps at him, say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and he ain't got no boots. Like, honestly, I believe if he was anywhere else but Grenada, he would have really had he would have really had a chance to shine. He would have made the country proud. Like, everybody would have known his name.
All right. Well, certainly we are happy that you can join us today on the Bubb Report and sharing what you knew about the late Jonty Josiah Robinson, who an autopsy report confirmed was in fact strangled. His body being discovered on BBC Beach on the morning of June 18th. There, he was last seen alive on the 17th of June down there at the BBC Beach. Of course, this remains an active investigation. We on the Bubb Report here will attempt to continue to update the national community with respect to what we are finding out around that investigation. Still no official word from the Royal Grenada Police Force as of the date of this recording, which is Thursday, June 29th. Of course, we will update you once we get an official statement from the Royal Grenada Police Force, but no official statement on the status of this investigation is forthcoming. Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.